The Canadian Bitcoiners podcast is just two guys and maybe a guest or two discussing Bitcoin, Bitcoin equities, and the related macroeconomic space. It's not meant to be financial advice, so please, if you're doing any investing after listening to our program, do your own research, do your own due diligence, and understand that any money you invest can be lost. The show is meant for entertainment purposes only, and we hope you enjoy the program.
1 hour and 3 minutes and 18 seconds. That's pretty good. That was a good rip there. Okay, time for the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast favorite, other notable stories. So what are we talking about tonight on ONS? What are we talking about?
So the US, they went out this past week and they sold a record amount of 10-year debt. And the Treasury Department, man, they made a fucking killing. So it was $42 billion of 10-year notes were sold last Wednesday. And those who bought them got or are going to be getting a cool 4.1% yield. Or in other words, 1.5 trading days worth of NVIDIA, if you look at the grand scheme of things. The previous record, now, I just want to bring this up because it's they're talking about this being a record number of the sales. It's not entirely true because the previous record was $41 billion. That was back in November of 2020. Adjusting this for inflation, the sale that they did this past week is much less in terms of dollar value, like value itself, than it was in November 2020. So November 2020, I'll take the adjusted for inflation. That is the record we have to beat. Just like the price of Bitcoin, whenever it is, we could say 69XXX is the all-time high. No, with adjusted for inflation as well. But don't want to go too much into the weeds here. All this really shows, this quote-unquote record sale of 10-year notes shows you that there's a thirst out there for more debt. There's no way that the United States of America can continue without going further and further into debt. And at the front of the show, we were talking, and was it behind the scenes or in front of the scenes? We're talking about the $32 trillion. I forget now. The debt, the public debt. You were saying $32 trillion. Yeah.
It was on the air, I think. It was on the air.
Okay, yeah. So that's another one. So like we're laughing at the fact that it's 34 and change trillion dollars. This is so much fucking debt, and they are going to just continually sell more and more of these notes moving forward because they have no other way to deal with what they have simply through taxation. And unfortunately, this is how it's going to be done. It has been done for the past little while. It will continually be done for the next little while, and it's just going to accelerate. Yeah. They're going to sell more and more of this because let's be honest, the value of the dollar gets less. They need more and more money to coming in to pay for whatever because now the dollars are worth far less. So it's accelerating, man. It's accelerating.
Who bought the 10-year notes? Do you know?
Not me.
I'm going to look right now. The problem with the note thing. Okay. So for people who don't know, it's actually an auction. So you bid on 10-year treasuries. Let's see. Recent auction results on Treasury Direct. Was it today?
It was Wednesday last week. They did a few tranches of different durations. The 10-year was done on Wednesday last week.
Okay, let me see if I can find it here.
This is some
security term 2.6 would be 2.6, right? 2.7. Okay, let's see. It's not here. I don't see it here. Yeah, I don't see it here. So whatever. I can't pin it down. But the point that I would make, oh no, here it is. Never mind. Here, let me go. 10-year notes. 10-year.
Some quality CBP.
This is good audio for sure.
Yeah, even better videos. But people watching.
I'll share my screen. So people who are still here, unbelievably. Thank you for staying. All 30.
The number of people tuning in, it's just going down.
This is it. Okay, so what am I to make of this here? Like, this is your bond.
They sold
auction.
They sold a bunch. There you go. And
what do you make of this? So this is bonds, 30-year, 20-year. Here's your 10-year notes. There's one from the 15th, and then the most recent one from after that is the 16th. This one I remember hearing about. This one. Let's see. We welcome your feedback here at Treasury Direct. So you can't see who bought them. I'd be curious because I think the problem with that market is that at some point central banks are buying all the debt, in which case, it's just Peter paying Paul, right? So like what are we talking about here? It's just like fake funny money everywhere you look. the rates are all made up because they're buying their own debt. So they're setting the rates to the level they like. I like shell shocked by this. Even my wife.
Did you ever read the Fiat Standard, by the way?
No, I have it, but I haven't read it. I don't read books. I got to start reading books. I'm copying to that right now.
The Fiat Standard, it's a awesome, like one of the first chapters talks about England, and they were funding the war, World War I, and initially they tried to sell bonds in order to fund it. And unfortunately, there wasn't enough demand to meet whatever money they needed. So what they did, they hid it that the central bank bought these bonds. So they issued them and sold it. So it's the first QE that was ever done. It was done 120 years ago, almost 110 years ago. So since then, it's just been done. And they did it in such a way they hid it. They had somebody do it on behalf of the bank. So it wasn't the bank directly.
It's just been scamming for a century. Unbelievable.
And this information wasn't known until almost 100 years later, at which time the information was made public. And then at that point, they realized, oh, fuck, they were lying all this time. So this is the shell game we're dealing with. The information is held for a century. We don't know shit until well after the fact. And you fucking issued the debt and bought it from yourself. Like, what the fuck is this?
Completely insane, man. I don't even know what to say about that. What people don't. Not that I'm saying everyone needs to like know the inner workings, the plumbing of the financial system, because I don't know it either. Like me and Len have been doing this show for 3 years, been in Bitcoin for about twice that long, and still I look at some of this stuff. Like even just now, right? Like I'm on the Treasury Direct website. I've never been there before. I don't know anything about like Treasury note auctions, except that I know they're auctions and they don't always go well recently. People who are even less informed than we are, and you guys and girls are, what do they think about stuff like this? The problem is they don't think anything about it. It's completely off the table for them. So when you say stuff to them like, oh, you know, the interest rate is set by XYZ, or Treasury auctions went XYZ this month, or it's foreign, and you lose people when you're discussing things that are like on the fringes of things that affect every aspect of their life. And they just have no idea. And shit, we don't have any idea either. We're out here talking about these auctions like, like we're pros. One of the reasons I've enjoyed writing stuff for the website, Len, is because number one, it gives me a chance to use my mechanical keyboard, which I'm addicted to, talk about ASMR feedback loops. But number two, because I see something interesting like this and I'm like, man, I got to write about this. Maybe the next one I'll write about auctions and see how it goes and learn a bit about them. And then we can talk about it, because it's important and no one knows about it. And it's like this thing that's underpinning the entire financial system all over the world. So there you go.
It's a fiat tool. So really, what the fuck is it? It's nothing. Acceleration data. I got some of that for credit cards.
Sure.
And, it's not just the Treasury Department that's piling on debt. Well, consumers are doing the same thing. And the Federal Reserve stated that the total household debt climbed another $212 billion in the fourth quarter. So in one quarter alone, the total household debt increased $212 billion. And it now sits at $17.5 trillion. That's the total household debt, $17.5 trillion. Not only that, delinquency rates are increasing, and there's an uptick in the outstanding debt that is in some way, some type, it's in a form of delinquency. Credit card debts and car loans are leading the charge here. So people are going behind on both credit card and car payments. In fact, 8.5% of credit card loans and 7.7% of auto loans are in some sort of trouble. That's a sizable number. And here's where it gets even more crazy. Total credit card debt in the US sits at $1.13 trillion. I did some quick Len math here. So we have $1.13 trillion. We have about 260 million adults in the United States. This equates to around $4,300 for every adult person in credit card debt. Yeah, $4,300. Some people are carrying $0 in balance. So it's conceivable that there are a lot of people out there that have 5 digits balance on their credit card, carrying this month to month, making minimum or not even making minimum payments on this. And this is at a time when rates are higher than they were in previous years. 5% may not seem a lot in early 80s, but past 15 years, it's certainly higher. So all this to say is that there's going to be something happening here. Who is going to be holding the bag? banks, then the Federal Reserve, and then it's going to be everybody. So ultimately, everybody's going to be feeling the pain here once they are the buyer of last resort, and they're the ones bailing out all these credit card payments that just need to be paid off. So $1.1 trillion in credit card debt. That is a fuckload. And that too, just like the federal debt, will never be repaid.
Okay, I got a good supplementary stat for you here, coming from our friends at Fred. You're going to love this. The delinquency rate on credit card loans across all commercial banks, okay, is 2.98%, just a little shy of 3%. Okay, pretty low. To give you some context there, in 2009, at the peak, last 30-year peak, it was 6.77. So you're 3%-ish now. It was 6.77, almost 7% in 2009. If we look at banks that are not among the 100 largest in size by assets, aka the banks that have been having trouble anyway and are about to run out of BTFP and all this other stuff, do you know what that delinquency rate jumps to?
8%?
7.5, higher than it was in 08 for the big ones. How's that stat? So what you got there is the little banks who are already, teetering. They have a lot more problems with delinquent loans, with a lot more people. That's on credit cards. What do you think it is on houses, cars? I bet you it's pretty high. And so when people say BTFP is going to expire and roll over, maybe, but do you think they're not going to replace with something else, or are they just going to let these guys burn? Because I really think there's some burning to be done when I see a stat like that. I don't know, man. To me, that's like a dangerous game to play, because they already had a problem with confidence, right? And you're checking a couple of boxes here, as I like to say. You got the BTFP running out. You got Jerome Powell doing 60 minutes. Like, none of these things are good if you think that the banks in the U.S. are, sound, resilient, solvent, whatever the word was they were using 2 years ago, a year ago. Interesting stuff, man.
The credit card debt and the other two that you mentioned for mortgages and car loans.
Yeah.
With the car loans and the mortgages, they could repossess the asset, maybe far less than what the initial loan was, but they still have that. With credit cards, typically they can't repossess.
The problem with repossessing the asset is they'd have to realize the loss. You know what I mean? Like, they're in a hole there. The whole point of the BTFP was, not realizing losses on your bonds. If you have to realize it on your real estate, specifically commercial, like if you have commercial, you're in a world.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that.
I'm on the Fred website, which, by the way, like if you ever want to just kill some time with a cup of coffee, the Fred website is great. Just type in the search results there, or type in the search bar, whatever you want to find, and they got it. Now, how good is the data? I don't know, but it's as good as there is out there. And
they're the ones
familiar with that site. Yeah,
they're the ones giving away. Anyways, New York Community Bancorp. Since we're talking about commercial real estate, since we're talking about these smaller / regional banks, let's talk about them. And we mentioned in previous episodes, I think last week, how their stock tumbled significantly because they reported some losses that were a surprise to investors. Well, shareholders, they have since filed a lawsuit against them because the stock price of this particular company reached a 27-year low, and also dividends are being slashed. So it's being cut in two different ways. So you're really taking it up the ass and everywhere else if you're a stockholder here. So this lawsuit is based on the company allegedly failing to disclose that it needed to earmark more money for credit losses. And as a result, there was a 71% dividend cut. 71%. That's significant. They posted a $260 million fourth quarter loss. And as I mentioned, this number was unexpected, and it caused the stock to absolutely fucking tank. Now, these losses, they're tied to loans for offices and apartment buildings. And they are heavily tied to real estate in New York, this bank is. And with apartments being their biggest exposure. And I took a deep dive into this. And according to Yahoo Finance, these properties could end up being worth a lot less than they used to be because of the high interest rates and the new limits in New York on rent increases. Amazing. Almost half the New York City apartments are rent subsidized. And if you look at what happened in 2019, the state put on a limit on how much rent could be increased. And that made it harder for landlords to make profits from buildings. Also, as a result of that, there's less appetite for the landlords to fix up the properties. So as a result, you're making less profit. The building hasn't been getting as much upkeep. So the overall value comes down to toss in some high interest rates and inflation. Well, you have the perfect storm now for the New York Community Bancorp that is absolutely getting wrecked due to their exposure in the real estate market in New York City. So there you go. That sort of ties into what you were saying earlier as what's going on with, this is pretty sad stuff. And this is not the only bank that's going to go tits up soon. There's going to be other ones, to mark my words. But this is the one that's, I guess, is getting all the highlights these days.
I'm not going to add anything. I think you're right. Isn't the question now, like you mentioned earlier, just when and what the response will be? The response can't be to just let all these regionals crash. It cannot be the response. You had guys like Calcanis and the all-in crowd talking about, the financial system will fall apart if we allow this. Confidence is the only thing that matters. You're throwing it out the window, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But I can't imagine they do nothing after the, coordinated, quick Sunday night, you'll recall, response that they had for SVB. So they going to do it again? I don't know. What are they going to do? Jerome Powell, come on the podcast. Let's talk about it. I know I'm not Scott Pelley, but, I got 60 minutes for you if you actually want to talk for that long.
I think that they're just going to let these bigger banks gobble them up for pennies on the whole. So
that would be nuts. That would be nuts. But you might be right. It's on the table for sure, right?
Yeah. So let these Banks of America, JP Morgan and so forth, just get them, not at the value of which they should be sold, but a lesser value to entice them to take them on, and business will continue and customers will still be served. But some customers who won't be served are going to be those in Seattle. And this is a story about unintended consequences, Joey. And there is a new ordinance from the city of Seattle. And this ordinance is adding $5 to all Doordash and Uber Eats orders. And the rationale for this was simple. It's supposedly to help those making the deliveries of these things earn a livable wage. And, well, unfortunately, this may have backfired. And the reason being is that fewer people now are making orders, where the delivery people used to have a full day worth of deliveries are now sitting around waiting for orders to appear on their phone.
Go figure.
Their phones.
Go figure.
One driver even shared he made last week, he made $464 as opposed to previous year, $931. So less than half than what he earned in the previous year.
Oh my God, man.
And this is all because people are deleting these apps because there's a $5 added surcharge.
What can we say about this, Len? Like, what do you say about this? How do you put this in perspective for people who are making these decisions? It's not like this is the first time. Like we've seen this a million times over the years. You add fees and costs and living wage this, and people just don't order anymore, right? And then the whole thing falls apart. What are you going to do? You're going to mandate that people order Uber Eats to help buddy have a decent life? I'm not saying it's a great situation, but this is not the answer, is it? We've seen this a million times. This story is one that's, as old as fiat economics, right? The invisible hand, not so invisible. And when you see it, it's already too late. It's already too late. I don't know, man. Seattle, like among the worst places in the world right now, right? Like worst first world cities to live in, gotta be.
It was so good to live some 30 years ago.
It's gone ever since the Supersonics left and Frasier stopped taping. Seattle went down the drain. That was the high point. That was the top tick.
Potentially, yeah. When did Supersonics leave?
Got to be the mid-aughts, maybe before 2010. I think.
So then, no, a few years before then, it was top because that's when the Mariners were kicking ass.
Kevin Durant got drafted by the Sonics, and I think he was in the 05 draft. So probably 05 or 06. Yeah.
Well before that. So anyways, let's talk about the border bill very quick. And the
impeachment bill, the Donald Trump impeachment bill / omnibus Ukraine bill /
it's like, and they call it the border bill, and this is why I am bringing this up because it's the name that's being bantied around. I'm not making this shit up. This is what's in the media, and just looking at this, you think of the border bill. Oh, there must be something that's trying to shore up what's happening down south because you have the flow of migrants and so forth. Well, it's not the case. It's $118 billion that's allocated towards this border bill. Mm-hmm. Of which 20 billion of the 118 is for border security. 20 billion is given. So 16% of the bill.
Nice.
That's quoted, named after by the media is going to be. sent for border security, 60 billion to support Ukraine, 14 billion in security assistance for Israel, 4.8 billion to support U.S. partners in Indo-Pacific facing aggression in China.
Okay.
An additional $10 billion would provide humanitarian assistance for civilians in conflict zones, including Ukraine, Gaza, and the West Bank.
Right. And $2 billion for NVIDIA puts for Paul Pelosi.
They made bank on that. They're up to, I don't know how many billions since they put that in November. Good for them. They foresaw something. The fuck they saw, I don't know.
Oh man, omnibus bills should be illegal, right? I think, isn't that fair to say? I saw Vivek, I should say, that's how you say his name, Sachs, Trump, and a few others today doing a space before the show started. And the space was about how there's also like an impeachment thing baked into that bill. Did you hear that?
And so they're going after Trump now. They're just throwing it in there.
I guess
535, a little segment there.
Yeah, something in there about the Gaza Strip, something in there about the border, and something in there about impeaching Trump. Like, what are we talking about? Like, what is going on around here? This is why this is why Other Notable Stories has become such a favorite in the CBP ecosystem here. Because it just never stops. The stories become more notable every week, it feels like.
Let's move on, Joe. There's nothing I got to say about that because okay. I want to say we have admission from Janet Yellen that high prices are here for good.
I love this one too. This is great. This is an all-timer. Good, a strong modern economic theory here. Go ahead.
I mean, seriously, it took all this time to finally come to this conclusion, but she says that wages are rising, so this could offset the higher prices that we're experiencing. The problem is, though, wages, it's a lag. They don't go up right away. There's going to be a period of time before prices of shit go up and then wages follow suit. And during that period of time, there's financial hardship that is being borne by the people that are just living. And plus the wages, they may not go up as high as the real cost of living is. That's another thing to consider. But she says, and we don't have to get we don't have to get the prices down because wages are going up. And she's noting that the median worker in the U.S. can buy the same basket of goods they did in 2019 that they did in 2019.
No.
Yeah. So Americans on average are better off in spite of the fact that the levels of prices are higher. So she's saying that people are better off now than they were in 2019. And so another thing to consider too is when you increase the wages of individuals, of the employees, the employers may want to then start cutting back because they're also dealing with higher prices. And one way to do it is to reduce the staff, and that's going to be an expense. So obviously that's one thing they could consider. So there is no easy solution. Higher wages, it's always lagged. I can't believe she's saying this stuff, but you know what? I don't think she's got much time left in terms of in that position.
Do you think she's dying? Oh, she's going to lose.
No.
Oh my God.
I hope she lives for another 50, 100 years. What the fuck
wow.
No. She looks healthy enough. I hope she lives for a very long time. No, but in terms of doing her, I don't think so. I don't think she's going to be in there for very much longer. Like
she's saying some crazy stuff, like suggesting that prices don't have to come down because wages are high. Like, I mean, where are wages high exactly? Like we talk every week about how people are making less money.
UPS
is doing well. Yeah. Unless you're a guy who got laid off, temp or otherwise. I mean, Janet, this is not how things work. I think, you're an educated economist. Maybe that's the reason you don't know. Who's the message for? Why would she say that? Is she trying to kill two birds with one stone there? Remind people that their wages are quote unquote up in, nominal terms. Even if not in real terms, while also saying that inflation has been crushed. Also, by the way, Biden not really doing a great job, like I mentioned earlier, in the same breath that he's talking about inflation being under control, producers are shrinking everything. And then you have this comment on top of that. Like, they're not even talking to each other, it feels like, doesn't it?
I think, his comments...
Did you see, to add to the chaos of the White House, Vice President Kamala Harris today saying she's ready to serve in the event that Joe Biden's age becomes a problem? Public statement.
But I think that was always the case. The vice president's always going to be.
It's always the case, but you don't say it. Why would you say it? You know? Come on. What are we talking about? It's getting crazy over there. We need KJP to settle this down. We got to get her on the podium.
I like
she can fix this now.
That video that Biden sent out about shrinkflation. Now, initially, I thought it was deep fake, but it came right from his Twitter account. So I was like, this can't be fake.
The movie. Most people today watching the big game, just like me, surrounded by snacks in a room where there's 30 velvet chairs and armed guards. Like, bro, come on, read the room. You know, what are we talking about here?
But I like that he took a few seconds there to talk about his beloved ice cream. He didn't gloss over that. You know what? I mean, since we're kind of on this topic, like you saw the Putin interview.
Yeah.
With you know what I found to be very funny about that,
What?
by the way, that interview with Carson. It's just that Putin, like from the get-go, was talking about history, right? And he was rhyming off dates, confidently rhyming off dates and events that happened hundreds of years, even
1,000 years ago.
Yeah. And he was just rhyming them off like that. And even when questioned, he was able to answer them. But as soon as he was asked, when is the last time you talked to Joe Biden? I don't remember. So in his head, it was more important to document and remember these dates than the last time he talked to the president of the United States. That is, to me, I found to be fucking funny.
That is true.
Talking to the president is just, it's not as important as remembering what happened in 1647.
Did you like the interview? Did you watch the whole thing?
I watched it almost 2 times. It was really good. Almost 2 times. It was very interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. I wish I knew more about like Russian history and how much of that border dispute history is true, but the contrast between the two leaders, is
the timing of that.
It's stark. It's stark. On the same night, geez, man. I'm not sure who's in charge of deciding when Biden does public appearances, but that one didn't do him any favors. I mean, I don't want to say it's weird because like whether he's in decline or not, I know like my own grandparents, when I talk to them in the evening, they're tired. I can tell that they're tired, right? I only have one grandparent left, but looking back, you can tell they're tired in the evening. Why put them out there at 8:00? Like to what end? You won that case.
Coffee.
Something like
take a nap and then you're good to go for another 6-7 hours.
Brutal.
I don't know.
Just so communication strategy, just so poor. I don't understand that at all. But anyway, we're not talking about that.
It looked good on paper, but once executed, it was pathetic.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go to some interesting Canadian stories that we should talk about. And Benjamin Felix, not sure if you saw this guy. He is a previous no coiner. Boomer is probably going to talk about it in chat. And you know what? I'm going to just mention what's going on here. This is a fairly prominent TradFi guy.
I know this guy. Yes.
He gives hints, but not financial advice on what's the best thing you should do with your money. And he was tweeting out, this fucking Shungad was tweeting out that the CPP, I'm going to just read this exactly. CPP is one of the best investments available to Canadians. It is the best inflation hedged asset most Canadians can buy. It hedges longevity risk. It spreads investment risks across a massive base of pensioners. Anyone who tells you it's a scam, that investment is wrong. I don't know, man. Like, this is no coiner talk, if you ask me. It might be this guy's a 2-time no coiner. You've mentioned it many times. One time there was 7 workers for pensioners that are drawing from CPP, and now it's 3.5 workers per pensioner.
Yeah.
And longevity of people living this much longer now. So there's going to be more people drawing upon it just by medical advances and so forth.
Yeah.
So looking at this, the CPP, you can't tell somebody in their 20s, 30s, or maybe in their 40s that a CPP is a great investment, because somebody can make a very strong argument that it may not be available at the time when they have to retire. So
nominal versus real is important too. Don't forget about that.
Sorry?
Nominal versus real. Your contributions will be given back to you at some level, but what's that going to be worth? I don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, reading. I don't know if you want to go and talk about this. I'm done talking about this.
I don't want to give Ben Felix any airtime. I'll just mention one thing. If it was such a good idea, they wouldn't have to force you to do it. That's all. but you are forced to do it. And they seem to be bringing people in to prop it up, by their own admission. It's not just the current Liberal government, but other governments have done the same thing. It doesn't seem like that good an idea to me personally, but to each their own, I guess. Good luck with the pension, I suppose. There's also no precedent for a bunch of people who don't really have any education in how to produce hard assets or do service, technical work, propping up an economy. Certainly no precedent for an entire generation of kids who went through a school system with no merit-based grading, addicted to SSRIs from an early age, supporting a pension system or a healthcare system that's, at the very least overburdened, in the worst case, crumbling. Good luck. I wish you all the best. I hope it works, Len. If it works, maybe we won't need Bitcoin. If it doesn't work, though, I'm going to be all set. So, good luck to Ben and all the people listening to and watching his show, I guess. What else can I say?
50,100. The people are speaking with their pocketbook. And
we're rolling, man. People don't want that currency. They want something harder, something that's going to last. And
Boomer's saying, as Greg Foss says, too smart by a half. And I just want to throw it out there. Anybody know what happened to Mr. Foss? He's disappeared on Twitter, right?
I do. I do.
Oh.
I thought I told you. Didn't I tell you this?
No.
I'll tell you after, but I'm not going to say it on the air. Yeah, I'm not going to say it on the air.
Okay, because if you go look at his Twitter, the last tweet he had was December-ish.
Yeah.
And it just seems odd that he just disappeared. Yeah, like I miss Greg. I mean, whatever. So we have a fake report, alleged fake report.
We're doing stories on fake reports now.
Sorry. That's wrong. So it's a report about fake Chinese income that is being used to get mortgages. This is all alleged information, nothing confirmed yet. But
I think it's confirmed. Sam Cooper's reporting it. I think it's pretty close to confirmed.
He's posting pictures too. Like it looks good, but again, I can't say for certain, and for liability, I don't want to say it is. That's why I'm using it's all alleged. But anyways, HSBC. This is all data that was leaked from them, and this is all coming from a whistleblower and somebody that is right now in a business grad school in Canada. And he was noticing when he was employed for HSBC at one of the branches in the GTA, noticing a few strange things that were going on. And namely, that were suspicious loans that he discovered in 2022. And it wasn't just 2022, it was the years leading up to that as well. And he noticed that the Chinese migrants living all over Toronto were getting mortgages from HSBC, but the salaries that they were reporting raised his concerns. And for example, remember this is all alleged, by the way, an Ontario casino worker who owned 3 homes also claimed to have earned $345,000 in. So this is by analyzing the data, and he was working for a remote Beijing company. So he was pretending to work over there, but also working here as an Ontario casino worker. And he says that since 2015, several GTA HSBC branches issued at least $500 million in home loans to these inflated income people claiming fake jobs in China. And to give context, one branch he worked for had an average of, before all this happened, $23 million was given out in home loans each year leading up to all this. But once all this came to be, they were issuing $50 million a year, $88 million a year. That's a huge jump from 23. And it's all because he suspects that fake income statements from China are being used to pump stuff up. And, these are potentially alleged scams and also money laundering. And I've mentioned money laundering in real estate many, many moons ago. And I'll bring it up again. If one were to get cash in Canada, if whatever means necessary, if you have a home, one way to clean this, not saying you should do this, but this is the reality, this is what happens, is you renovate your house. You use that cash, pay the workers cash, work is done, the home is improved, sell the house, it's clean. The money you then had that was initially dirty is now clean. And I'm just talking about the money laundering. But for this, in terms of all this like fake stuff, the fake Chinese income, these people were, with the fake income over there, were bidding up against people that had real income over here, driving up the prices even more. So all this has been going on for several years, from 2015 up until 2022. And it even says the story highlights that 66% of buyers in several affluent neighborhoods were recently Chinese migrants. And most mortgages went to buyers with little or no income to Canada.
Insane.
So they had very little income here. They were claiming a lot of income there in China. With that, they were able to buy up a lot of homes in several affluent areas, probably in Northeast Toronto, and just even outside Northeast GTA, considering
Vancouver. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because he was based in Aurora. I'm thinking this is more just
Oh, sure.
mortgages.
This particular guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this is
the
sad.
most,
but it's
okay. The most damning thing is that Cooper and guys like Alderlane Eggs, I can't remember his actual name. Alderlane Eggs is his Twitter handle. Those guys say the same thing. And again, this is an allegation, so don't sue me. But the thing is that the banks know and just don't dig into it, because that's where they're buttering their bread on these loans, right? On these mortgages. And they don't care if the income is illegitimate or overseas or fudged or whatever. The bigger problem, Len, is like, at some point there's going to be legislation that the CRA and the bank are going to link their books, and everything's going to be transparent, which is great for a lot of reasons, but it's just the continued creep into your personal data by both government and private institution in the bank's case, in the name of safety, and in this case a very sensitive topic like housing and shelter. It's just there's no good outcomes here. The foreign buyers ban leaves a lot of holes. Actually, Soretsky wrote about that, I think it was today or last week, I forget, about some of the gaps in the foreign buyers ban. If you look it up, it doesn't really ban any foreign buyers. Like if you're a student, you can buy. If you're a PR, you can buy. If you come over here to
you're not a foreign buyer if you're PR.
Buy. Yeah, whatever, right? But you should be. You should be for like 5 years, something like that. Like there should be rules. I mean, look, you're talking about some of the ways you can exploit this. Certainly there are other people who are exploiting it in similar ways. It's not like I have to guess. I live in University Town. We've talked about the stuff that goes on near Mac, by Columbia College, Conestoga, Algoma, you name it, right? All these colleges have been rinsing people vis-a-vis these means, bringing in international students and having these kids buy a property. They shouldn't be allowed to do it if we're serious about it. Now, if we're not serious about it, then let it be a free-for-all, let the market dictate, and these guys can be part of the market too. But this idea that the foreign buyers ban does anything, I think it's difficult for me to understand exactly where the roadblocks are for people who are coming from other countries. Because, if a student land can come over and buy a house, then, how are we defining student? Maybe that's where we should start. If a PR can come over and buy a house, whatever, on a work visa, I don't know, man. It's dicey. The point is that there's clearly regions where this type of behavior from banks, income statements, whatever, is more prevalent than others, and something's got to be done about it. I don't know what, but according to Cooper and others, no one really has any interest in figuring out what the problem is. Seems like that's a big issue.
Good politics, and I don't know if it's good or not policy. I guess we could make a decision on that. But in terms of permanent residents, PRs, you're mentioning, maybe I'm not sure if you're misidentifying what they are. So permanent resident is somebody that is living here in Canada that has almost every right that a Canadian citizen does, except for the right to carry a passport and vote. They could stay here, they could work here, they could do whatever they want. They're essentially living here as a foreign national, but just with the only thing they can't do.
That's why I said maybe not an outright ban, but like, can we time lock it? Can we do, you know what I mean? Like you have to prevent property speculation. And if the vehicle that speculators are using are PR tickets, then what do you do, right? Either like it's a hard thing to figure out. There's no easy solution to the problem. And these are sensitive topics, right? Because a lot of people are legitimate buyers. They come over and work and they want to live here. Great. Some are not. And if we really think that this is what's causing home prices to go up, I personally don't. I think that it's a lot of other things. But if this is what, the powers that be believe is causing home prices to go up, we got to get serious about it. Got to put things in place, right? I think you and I both probably agree that this is not, a top 10 cause of the home prices going up in Canada. But, that's a story for another time.
It's all cumulative. And, and it's just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I don't want to keep harping on it. If somebody comes to Canada as a permanent resident, they go through the process. They uprooted their life to come here.
Yeah.
Personally, in my opinion, they should have every right if they wanted to buy a home, just like anybody else. They could.
What if they want? What if they want to buy?
Living here.
What if they want to buy two and part of the paycheck comes from overseas?
That's something that it's different.
There's got to be some limit, right? Like I think we both agree on that. There's got to be some limit.
But
I don't know where the line is, but it's somewhere.
Yeah, it's difficult to validate some of these foreign documents. They could issue it, and let's be honest, it could come from anybody, and it may look legitimate, and they could call and say, "Yeah, is this legit?" Yeah, it's true, but it's really just your family member to their side.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's hard to verify stuff, and that's what creates a problem. And if they're able then to circumvent the system to then get homes, and then immediately they just rent the fucking thing to, every room gets rented out, and that's a way that they could pay the mortgage, even though they don't have much of an income here in Canada or no income even in their home country. They're just using the rental income to pay for everything. That's one unit that's taken away from everybody else. That's one home that nobody else could buy. And then you do that, multiply it many times. As you say, it's maybe not the reason why things are going up.
We should talk about this, reason. Right? Like Floyd Marinescu is going to come, I think, to my house in March to do a show. He's big on the land, or it's not property tax. It is the land value tax, right? And I don't know how I feel about that. I disagree with him on some things, but I may agree with him on some of his other ideas. I'd be curious to hear what, in any case, I'd be curious to hear what he thinks is driving the cost of homes up. Because he's obviously done a lot of work on it. He comes at it from a different angle than you and me. Let's see where we align. I bet you we align on a lot of things.
Is there any other main reason that you could think of that's not M2?
No.
Is that really it? I mean, is that really the primary reason?
Well, the thing is, like, I've said this on our show before. I've said it on Tom and Nick's show every time we've been on there. Everyone knows what the problem is, even if they articulate it differently or can't articulate it at all. They know they can't be in cash. Boomers don't necessarily want to buy Nvidia and Apple. They like real estate. They like gold. And so they buy it, right? And real estate is a friendly investment for someone in their 50s, 60s, and 70s because they know how to maintain a house. They know how to do basic stuff like plumbing and electrical. I don't know how to do that. So real estate for me is not an appealing investment vehicle. I have my primary residence, and that's it. It's all I'm planning to have for the time being. It is a liability in a lot of ways. But for a boomer, you may feel differently. We've monetized different assets. We've monetized the S&P, monetized housing, monetized whatever, right?
There's a lot to this because the wages haven't, if you look at the price of homes over the past 30, 40, 50 years, and you graph it out and you look at the wages, the value or price of the home, it vastly exceeds the wages.
Yeah.
So at a time, decades ago, it was much easier to qualify for a mortgage and pay for a mortgage if it's your second home, third home, and so forth. So at a different time, that's why, you may say boomers, but they were able to take advantage of the situation that was.
You're right, Len. Yeah, you're right.
Unfortunately, here it's very difficult now to buy a second home without that incredible income or some other secondary stream of income that's.
You should ask Tom and Nick what their client base is doing. Right? Because they were at I don't know if they're specifically and explicitly and exclusively recommending the Burr method, but it seems to me that that's like the way everyone was doing that, right? You buy, you rent, you re-leverage, and you just roll it again, right? Like that was the whole thing. And maybe they're still doing that. Maybe they're not. I don't know, right? I'd be curious. You should ask them that when you go see. Anyway, we're coming up on time here. Do you want?
I thought we were doing another 2.5 hour episode.
Oh my fucking god! Are you kidding me?
Let's end it here.
Yeah, that's a great show. Thanks everyone for hanging out in the chat. Strong as always. I will tweet out when I know exactly what time and day Chris QTR is going to come on the show, and you guys can come for that or watch it after I post it. And
so to confirm, there's no love line.
No love line. We're not going to do it. No. Too bad. I know. Sucks. Anyway, take care, everybody. Yeah, until next time.
Second year in a row. Kind of like last minute. So anyways, take care and don't be a cuck.
Don't forget, everybody, lots of other stuff on CBP Media Network, including Two Whites and a Blue. Me, Joey, my brother-in-law, Mike, and our friend Will talk about all the problems millennials are having with finance, romance, and just getting by. If you'd like CBP, if you like the NHL 94 podcast, I guarantee you'll like that one. Search for it, Two Whites and a Blue, anywhere you get your podcasts. We look forward to seeing you.